Imagine your daughter suddenly pays for her dream, a luxurious vacation in Hawaii, first-class tickets, and paradise beaches. I was as happy as a child until, before boarding the plane home, I heard her whisper to her husband, "For him, this is a one-way trip." The betrayal by my own flesh and blood hit me like poison, but I thought, we'll see about that. The consequences caught up with them quickly. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. The divorce papers from Martha's estate still lay where Beverly had thrown them last week, coffee-stained and accusatory across my kitchen table. 7 days since our fight, and I hadn't moved them. Maybe I wanted the reminder of how my own daughter could turn something sacred into a weapon. I stood there in my old terry cloth robe, unshaven, holding yesterday's cold coffee. Rain drummed against the window, typical February in Portland. The house felt enormous around me, every creak and settle echoing in rooms that once buzzed with life. Martha's absence lived in these walls now, and Beverly's cruelty had made it sharper. The phone shattered my brooding. I almost didn't answer, too many telemarketers lately, but the caller ID showed Beverly's name. Dad? Her voice was different, soft, almost apologetic. "I've been thinking about our conversation." I grinned my teeth. "You mean when you told me I was too old to live alone and should sell the house?" I said things I didn't mean. A pause. "Dad, I want to make it right. I have something for you. A surprise. Can I come over?" 37 years of being her father had taught me Beverly's patterns. She only called when she wanted something, but this tone, I hadn't heard it since she was 12 and broke Martha's favorite vase. "What kind of surprise?" "The kind that shows how sorry I am. I'll be there in 30 minutes. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my accountant's mind already calculating probabilities. Beverly lived across town near the Lloyd district. 30 minutes was realistic if she was already driving. I showered and dressed, movements automatic. When the doorbell rang exactly 28 minutes later, I found Beverly on my porch holding yellow roses, Martha's favorite. She looked different somehow, softer, her usual sharp business attire replaced by a cream sweater and jeans. Even her makeup seemed gentler. "Hi, Dad." She stepped forward and embraced me. Actually embraced me, not the perfunctory hug she usually managed. Her kiss on my cheek felt genuine. "Beverly." I stepped back, studying her face. "These are beautiful." I remembered how Mom loved them. She followed me inside, her heels clicking nervously on the hardwood. God, I've missed this house. It smells like home. We sat in the living room where Martha's piano still held her sheet music. Beverly perched on the edge of the sofa, clutching a manila envelope. "Dad, I've been horrible to you, especially last week." Her voice cracked slightly. "Losing Mom and then watching you struggle alone. I thought I was being practical, but I was just being cruel." I remained silent. Beverly was many things, but rarely vulnerable. "I want to give you something." She handed me the envelope with trembling fingers. "Open it." Inside were airline tickets. First class to Honolulu. Departure February 22nd, return March 8th. Hotel vouchers for the Royal Hawaiian. My hands shook as I examined the documents. "Beverly, this must have cost—" "Don't worry about the cost." She leaned forward, eyes bright. "You've never been to Hawaii? Mom always wanted to take you there, remember? For your 30th anniversary?" The memory hit like a physical blow. Martha had circled Hawaii packages in travel magazines for months. Then her first heart episode happened, and we'd canceled everything. "I can't accept this." "Yes, you can." Beverly's voice grew firm, more like her usual self. "You deserve this, Dad. You've earned it. And maybe when you come back, we can start fresh." I looked at the tickets again. First class. The Royal Hawaiian. The pink palace Martha had dreamed about. 2 weeks in paradise. "Why now?" I asked quietly. Beverly's composure flickered for just a moment. "Because I realized I might lose you too. And I can't bear that thought." She stood, straightening her sweater. "Anthony will pick you up Thursday morning at 10. Your flight leaves at 1:15. "Anthony's coming too?" "Of course. We're family." Another quick kiss on my cheek. "Pack light clothes and lots of sunscreen. And Dad, have the time of your life." I watched her car disappear down the street, rain beginning to fall harder. The tickets felt real in my hands. Solid, expensive, genuine. But as I closed the door, one question echoed in my mind. Since when did Beverly spend $5,000 on anyone but herself? The Macallan whiskey burned less than the questions circling my mind. I'd spent the day running errands in town, banking, pharmacy, groceries, anything to avoid thinking too hard about Beverly's unexpected generosity. Now, settled in my leather recliner with the Hawaii brochures spread across the coffee table, I couldn't escape the arithmetic anymore. The tickets alone had to cost $3,000. The Royal Hawaiian wasn't cheap, probably another $2,000 for 2 weeks. My daughter, who'd been dodging family dinners and making excuses about money problems, had just dropped $5,000 on my guilt trip. The legal documents still cluttered the side table. Martha's will, my own estate papers, the house deed Beverly had eyed so hungrily last week. I picked up my copy of our argument, reconstructing every word. February 8th. She'd arrived without calling, unusual for her, walked straight to this same room and gestured at the walls, like she was already measuring for renovation. Dad, be realistic. This place is $800,000 just sitting here. You rattle around in 4 bedrooms like a ghost. I'd bristled then. It's my home, Beverly. Your mother and I built our life here. Mom's gone. Her voice had turned cold, efficient. You're 77? 67? Whatever. The point is, you're getting older. What happens when you fall down those stairs? Who's going to help you? The conversation had spiraled from there. Beverly's frustration bubbling over into cruelty, her complaints about Anthony's job, their financial pressures, how unfair it was that all this equity sat unused while they struggled with bills. You could sell this place, get a nice condo, and still have money left over, she'd pressed. And maybe you could help family who actually needs it. That's when I'd lost my temper. If you need money, get a better job. Stop expecting handouts. Beverly's face had twisted with something ugly. Handouts? I'm your only child, Dad. Who else is going to get this house when you die? I'm just suggesting we make it practical. She'd stormed out after calling me selfish and stubborn. Now here she was, 7 days later, offering paradise. I took another sip of whiskey and studied Martha's photograph on the mantel. 42 years of marriage had taught me to trust her instincts about people, especially our daughter. She's got your stubbornness, but none of your patience, Martha had said once, after Beverly threw a tantrum about her college fund. She calculates everything, Barney, even love. I defended Beverly then. Young people were just more direct about what they wanted. But Martha had been right about the calculating part. Beverly approached relationships like business transactions. What could she get? What did she owe? What were the terms? The roses sitting in Martha's crystal vase caught the lamplight. Yellow roses for a woman who'd been dead 8 months. Beverly had remembered that detail, filed it away for exactly this moment. Even her outfit today had been calculated. The soft sweater instead of her usual blazer, the nervous energy that seemed genuine but felt practiced. My accountant's mind couldn't stop running the numbers. Beverly worked part-time at a medical office. Anthony did something with chemicals for a manufacturing company. Decent money, but nothing spectacular. They lived in a nice enough house in southeast Portland, but I'd heard Beverly on the phone months ago, stressed about mortgage payments. Where had $5,000 come from overnight? I set down the whiskey and walked to the window. The February rain continued its assault on Portland, turning the street into a river of reflected streetlights. This house had weathered 40 years of Oregon storms. Martha and I had raised Beverly here, celebrated birthdays and anniversaries, weathered her teenage rebellions and young adult mistakes. Beverly wanted me gone, not dead. She wasn't that calculating yet. But out of this house, in some manageable senior living situation where she could control my finances and plan her inheritance. The Hawaii trip was brilliant, actually. Get me out of town for 2 weeks while she had the house appraised, met with real estate agents, found the perfect retirement home to present as a suggestion when I returned. But as I studied the airline tickets again, doubt crept in. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe Beverly really did feel guilty. Maybe she'd borrowed money, or maxed out credit cards to give her lonely father a gift. Maybe sometimes a Hawaiian vacation was just a Hawaiian vacation. I folded the tickets carefully and placed them next to my passport. Whatever Beverly's motives, I deserved this trip. Martha would have wanted me to go. Tomorrow I'd start packing, and maybe, just maybe, my daughter had finally learned something about love. The week had passed in a blur of anticipation and preparation. I'd researched Hawaii obsessively, weather forecasts, restaurant recommendations, tourist attractions Martha would have loved. My excitement had gradually overwhelmed my suspicions, like warmth driving out winter chill. Now, the morning before departure, I stood over my open suitcase, methodically folding Hawaiian shirts I'd bought at Nordstrom. Bright blues and greens that Martha would have teased me about wearing. The salesperson, a kid young enough to be my grandson, had assured me they were authentic island style. Sunscreen SPF 50 for my pale Oregon skin. Medications organized in a weekly pill dispenser Beverly had bought me years ago. Camera equipment, though everything was digital now. Reading glasses, regular glasses, distance glasses, the accessories of careful aging. My passport still had 3 years before expiration. The photo showing a younger, less weathered version of myself from the trip to Ireland Martha and I never took. Too many plans deferred, too many some days that never came. The doorbell interrupted my packing. Mrs. Collins from next door stood on my porch, holding a plate of her famous oatmeal cookies, her silver hair bright under the porch light. "Barney, I'm so excited for you." Dorothy Collins had lived next door for 15 years, ever since her husband passed. We'd maintained the careful friendship of neighboring widows, close enough to help, distant enough to preserve independence. "Dorothy, you didn't need to." "Nonsense. Travel cookies." She followed me inside, eyeing my preparations with genuine enthusiasm. "Look at you, going off on adventures. Martha would be so proud." The comment hit harder than expected. "Beverly arranged everything. First-class tickets, fancy hotel." That girl finally came to her senses. Dorothy's approval was warm, but carried an edge. She'd witnessed enough of Beverly's visits to form opinions. About time she showed some appreciation for her father. I handed her my house key and emergency contact information. "Just check the mail, maybe turn on different lights each evening, make it look lived in." "Of course, dear. And don't worry about anything here. You just focus on having the time of your life." After Dorothy left, I continued packing with renewed energy. The house felt lighter somehow, filled with possibility instead of just memories. Maybe Beverly really had changed. Maybe Anthony would turn out to be better company than I'd expected. Maybe I'd discover parts of myself that hadn't died with Martha. The phone rang at 4 o'clock. Beverly right on schedule. "All packed, Dad. Just finishing up. You sure about 10 o'clock tomorrow?" "Anthony will be there at 10 sharp. Traffic to PDX shouldn't be bad that time of day." Her voice carried a strange undercurrent, excitement mixed with something else. "Urgency, maybe? Beverly, I want you to know how much this means to me." A pause. "I'm just glad we can do this for you, Dad. You deserve it." After hanging up, I stood in my bedroom surveying 2 weeks' worth of carefully selected vacation clothes. Everything bright and hopeful, purchased specifically for a trip I'd never imagined taking. The house around me felt expectant, like it was holding its breath. I'd left contact information with the bank, arranged mail hold with the post office, set timers for the lights. Everything secure, everything planned. Tomorrow at this time, I'd be somewhere over the Pacific Ocean, heading toward Hawaiian sunshine. But as I zipped the suitcase closed, a tiny voice in my accountant's brain whispered one last calculation. Beverly had been awfully specific about my departure time, considering she wouldn't be the one driving me to the airport. Their black Honda Accord pulled into my driveway at exactly 10 o'clock. I watched from the living room window as Anthony climbed out, his movements stiff and mechanical. Beverly emerged from the passenger side wearing oversized sunglasses despite the overcast Portland morning, her smile stretched too wide as she approached my front door. Anthony avoided my eyes when I opened the door, focusing instead on my suitcase with an intensity that seemed excessive for simple luggage handling. "Ready for paradise, Dad?" Beverly's voice carried that same forced cheerfulness from our phone calls. Her laugh came too quickly, too loud for my simple, "Yes, I think so." The car ride revealed more troubling details. Anthony gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles showed white against his dark skin. His eyes darted constantly to the rearview mirror, not checking traffic but watching me. When I caught his gaze, he'd quickly look away. Beverly's phone buzzed constantly. She'd check it, whisper something to Anthony, then glance back at me with another artificial smile. Their hushed conversations carried an urgency that had nothing to do with flight schedules. "Everything all right?" I asked during one of their whispered exchanges. "Perfect." Beverly's response came too fast. "Just coordinating with the hotel about our arrival time." Highway traffic moved smoothly toward PDX, but Anthony drove like he was navigating a minefield. Every lane change seemed calculated, every turn signal used with excessive caution. This from a man who normally drove with the aggressive confidence of someone always running late. At the airport, Beverly insisted on handling all check-in procedures, while Anthony disappeared repeatedly. First for coffee, then to check parking meters, then to find a bathroom. Each absence lasted longer than necessary, and he'd return looking more agitated than when he'd left. The security checkpoint amplified their strange behavior. Anthony fumbled with his carry-on bag, reorganizing contents that couldn't have been disturbed since packing. When the TSA agent asked routine questions about his luggage, sweat beaded on Anthony's forehead despite the airport's air conditioning. Beverly positioned herself between Anthony and me during our wait at the gate, deflecting my attempts at normal conversation with rapid subject changes. When I mentioned looking forward to trying Hawaiian cuisine, she launched into an unexpectedly detailed monologue about resort amenities. "The concierge service is supposed to be exceptional," she said, consulting her phone again. "They can arrange everything, dinner reservations, activities, even special dietary accommodations." Anthony shifted uncomfortably at the mention of dining, his expression darkening. "You two seem nervous about this trip," I observed, watching their reactions carefully. "Nervous? No, just excited." Beverly's denial came with another forced laugh. "It's been so long since we've taken a real vacation together." But excited people didn't whisper in corners like conspirators. They didn't check phones obsessively or avoid eye contact with family members. My 40 years of auditing financial records had taught me to recognize when numbers didn't add up, and something about this entire situation felt fundamentally wrong. The boarding announcement interrupted my analysis. As we gathered our carry-on bags, I noticed Anthony's hands trembling slightly. Whatever was making them both so anxious, it wasn't typical pre-flight jitters. The gate agent scanned our first-class tickets with professional efficiency. As we walked down the jetway toward our Hawaiian adventure, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking toward something far more dangerous than a tropical vacation. The first-class cabin offered spacious seating and attentive service that Beverly had specifically arranged. She insisted Anthony sit between us, claiming she wanted the aisle seat for easy bathroom access, but her real motivation became clear during takeoff. She spent the entire ascent gripping the armrest, knuckles white with tension. Strange, considering Beverly had flown dozens of times for business and pleasure. She'd never shown flight anxiety before. Anthony refused the flight attendant's offer of pre-departure champagne, unusual for someone who typically enjoyed airline perks. Beverly declined alcohol entirely, requesting water instead. In all my years knowing my daughter, I had rarely seen her turn down free drinks on flights. 2 hours into the 6-hour journey, their behavior patterns had crystallized into something unmistakably suspicious. Anthony made frequent trips to the bathroom and galley area, always carrying his small leather messenger bag. During these absences, Beverly would check her phone despite airplane mode requirements, then quickly hide the screen when I glanced her way. I began employing old auditing techniques, feigning sleep while keeping my ears alert, using reflective surfaces to observe them when they thought I wasn't watching. The airplane's curved windows provided excellent surveillance opportunities. During meal service, I closed my eyes and regulated my breathing to appear asleep. Their whispered conversations started almost immediately. 13 days, Beverly hissed, barely audible above the cabin noise. "We stick to 13 days exactly. Any longer looks suspicious." "Everything necessary is in the baggage," Anthony replied, his voice tight with stress. "But what if customs? They won't check anything. He's an elderly man on vacation with family." My heart began racing, but I maintained steady breathing. Elderly man? Why were they discussing customs inspections and mysterious items in baggage? "His age works in our favor," Beverly continued. "Travel stress? Different climate? Rich food? Heart episodes happen all the time. Heart episodes. The phrase sent ice through my veins. They were discussing my death like a weather forecast. The timing has to be perfect, Anthony whispered. Last evening, farewell dinner. Make it special, memorable for witnesses. I fought to control my breathing as the full horror crystallized. They weren't just discussing my death, they were planning it. Planning it for the last night of our Hawaiian vacation, in front of witnesses who would remember a loving family dinner. Beverly's response chilled me further. He trusts us completely now. The reconciliation this trip, he thinks we're finally acting like real family. What about afterward? Anthony's voice carried fear. The investigation? Natural causes. 77-year-old man, recent widow, stress of travel. They'll sign the death certificate without question. 67, not 77, but I wasn't about to correct them. My mind raced through implications. Whatever Anthony carried in his baggage wasn't vacation supplies, it was the means of my murder, and they'd planned this entire reconciliation as an elaborate setup. Turbulence shook the aircraft, providing cover as I shifted position slightly. The seatbelt sign illuminated, and Beverly immediately stopped whispering. When Anthony returned from another bathroom trip, his face was pale and drawn. The remaining flight hours passed in a haze of artificial normalcy. Beverly chatted about Hawaiian attractions while I nodded and smiled, my mind frantically analyzing everything I'd learned. They needed 13 days. They planned to strike on the final evening, and they'd chosen Hawaii, specifically because my death would seem natural in an exotic location far from home. As we descended toward Honolulu, the cabin filled with golden afternoon light and the excited chatter of arriving passengers, but all I could think about was survival. My loving daughter and her husband weren't taking me on a dream vacation, they were taking me to my execution. The 13 days had passed like a carefully choreographed performance. Beverly and Anthony played their roles flawlessly, the devoted daughter and son-in-law treating their elderly patriarch to the vacation of a lifetime. We'd toured Pearl Harbor, snorkeled at Hanauma Bay, attended a traditional luau. To outside observers, we were the picture of a reconciled family. But I'd spent those 2 weeks watching, analyzing, cataloging every suspicious behavior. Beverly's forced enthusiasm never wavered, but I noticed how she steered us away from certain restaurants, how she insisted on specific room arrangements, how she constantly monitored our daily schedules with military precision. Anthony grew increasingly agitated as our departure approached. His appetite disappeared, his sleep became restless, and he'd disappear for long walks on the beach, always carrying that leather messenger bag. Whatever was inside had become his constant companion. This final evening, I'd established a routine of getting ice around 9 o'clock for my nighttime whiskey. The ice machine was located near the pool terrace, where late evening guests often gathered for drinks under the stars. As I approached the machine, familiar voices drifted from a secluded table partially hidden by tropical foliage. Beverly and Anthony sat alone, their conversation intense and hushed. Instead of announcing my presence, something made me step behind a large palm tree. What I heard confirmed my worst fears. "Tomorrow night at dinner," Beverly was saying, her voice completely different from the sweet tone she'd used with me all week. "The Farewell restaurant overlooks the harbor. Perfect atmosphere, lots of witnesses to remember the loving family celebration." Anthony's hands shook as he lifted his drink. "I've tested the dosage 3 times. Fast-acting mimics cardiac arrest perfectly. In his condition, with his age—" "Stop second-guessing everything," Beverly snapped. "We've planned this perfectly. The insurance money, plus the house sale, plus his savings accounts. We're talking about almost $1 million, Anthony." My chest tightened as the full scope of their planning became clear. This wasn't just about inheritance. They'd calculated my worth down to the penny. "What about after?" Anthony asked. "The questions, the investigation?" "What investigation?" Grief-stricken daughter loses father to sudden heart attack during emotional farewell dinner. The stress of losing Martha. The unfamiliar climate. Rich food. It writes itself. Anthony reached into his messenger bag and withdrew a small vial filled with clear liquid. Even in the dim poolside lighting, it caught the reflection of the underwater lights. 2 drops in his wine during the toast, Beverly instructed. "I'll make sure everyone's watching us. remembering how happy he seemed, how much he was enjoying himself. And if he doesn't drink wine, he will. I've ordered his favorite, the Bordeaux he and Mom shared on anniversaries. He won't be able to resist the sentimental gesture. I pressed deeper into the shadows as Anthony pocketed the vial. They were discussing my murder with the clinical detachment of business partners, finalizing a contract. No emotion, no regret, just cold calculation about the most efficient way to kill me. "One more day," Beverly continued. "Tomorrow night we'll be free of him forever. No more guilt trips about the house. No more managing his medical appointments. No more pretending to care about his lonely widower routine." Her words cut deeper than the murder plot itself. Every kind gesture, every moment of apparent reconciliation had been elaborate theater. My own daughter despised me so completely that my death was a cause for celebration. I retreated silently to my room, my hands shaking so violently I could barely insert the keycard. Inside, I collapsed into the chair by the window, staring out at the Hawaiian paradise that was supposed to be my tomb. They had one more day to wait, but I had one more day to survive, and unlike them, I had no intention of sticking to anyone else's timeline. Sleep was impossible. I spent the hours before dawn pacing my hotel room like a caged animal, replaying their conversation over and over. 2 drops in my wine, toast to my memory, heart attack from travel stress. The clinical precision of their planning made my skin crawl. By 3 a.m., survival instinct had crystallized into action. I couldn't confront them. They had poison and nothing left to lose. Calling hotel security would require explanations I couldn't prove. The local police would see a confused elderly tourist making wild accusations against his loving family. Escape was my only option. I began packing systematically, leaving most clothes behind to avoid suspicion. Passport, wallet, medications, 1 change of clothes. My shaking hands fumbled with zippers and latches, every sound amplified in the pre-dawn silence. At exactly 5 a.m., I slipped my room key under their door with a carefully worded note. Emergency call from bank about fraudulent charges on my accounts. Had to catch earliest flight home to sort it out. Will explain everything when you return. Thank you for wonderful trip. Love, Dad. The banking emergency was perfect, exactly the kind of crisis that would panic a man my age into immediate action. The hotel corridors felt endless as I wheeled my suitcase toward the elevator. Every footstep seemed to echo like gunshots. When the elevator dinged, I held my breath, waiting for Beverly's voice to call my name. Nothing, just the hum of air conditioning and distant ocean waves. The ride to Honolulu Airport stretched like an eternity. My taxi driver, a cheerful local named Kai, chattered about weather and tourism while I calculated timing. If Beverly and Anthony slept until 7, found my note at 8, they'd have no way to stop me. At the airport, panic nearly overwhelmed me. The first available flight to Portland wasn't until 10:30, meaning 4 hours of vulnerability. What if they tracked my credit card? What if airport security called them to verify my sudden departure? But the ticket agent, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, treated my request with professional efficiency. Emergency family travel happened constantly. Nothing suspicious about an elderly man rushing home to handle financial problems. Security checkpoint passed without incident. Gate area provided anonymous refuge among early morning business travelers. I kept my phone off, avoiding any chance of Beverly's calls creating a scene. During the 6-hour flight, my mind shifted from escape mode to strategic planning. Simply running wasn't enough. They'd try again once I returned to Portland. I needed evidence, protection, legal safeguards. Most importantly, I needed to turn their own trap against them. The plane descended through Portland's familiar gray clouds, and I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Control. For the first time since Martha's death, I was making decisions instead of simply surviving them. Beverly and Anthony had planned my murder with mathematical precision. Now it was time to show them what a real accountant could do with numbers that didn't add up. As we touched down at PDX, I turned on my phone for the first time in 12 hours. The screen immediately lit up with notifications, missed calls, voicemails, text messages. Beverly's panic had begun. Perfect. Let them wonder. Let them worry. The real game was just starting. 47 missed calls, 16 voicemails, 23 text messages. My phone screen resembled a battlefield of electronic desperation as I sat in the taxi, leaving Portland International. Beverly's voice, captured in timestamp progression from confusion to panic to barely controlled fury, told the story of a plan unraveling. "Dad, where are you? We found your note, but you're not answering." Morning confusion, still manageable. "Dad, please call me back. What bank? What charges? I'm worried sick." Growing concern, still playing the caring daughter. "Daddy, answer your phone right now. This is ridiculous. You can't just disappear." Afternoon anger, facade cracking. The final message, left just an hour ago, carried an edge I'd never heard before. "Dad, call me back. Whatever game you're playing, stop it." Game? Interesting choice of words from someone planning murder. My house felt like a fortress when the taxi dropped me off. Familiar walls, familiar smells, familiar safety. The contrast with Hawaiian paradise couldn't have been sharper. Here, I controlled the environment. Before I could even set down my suitcase, the phone rang. Beverly's name flashed on the screen like an accusation. "Dad! Thank goodness you're okay." Her relief sounded genuine, but I caught the underlying tension. What happened? What bank emergency? I'd had 6 hours to perfect my story. Someone tried to use my debit card in Seattle. The fraud department called at 5 this morning, said I needed to get home immediately to sign documents. "You could have called us." "I tried. Your phones went straight to voicemail." True, actually. I'd attempted exactly one call before deliberately disabling my phone. "Dad, you scared us to death? Anthony wanted to call the police?" Anthony. My would-be murderer was concerned about my welfare. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. You know how these financial things panic me." Silence. Beverly was processing, analyzing, deciding whether to believe my story. Finally, which bank? First National. The manager, Mrs. Patterson, you met her when we set up the will arrangements. Another masterful truth. Beverly had met Mrs. Patterson, giving credibility to my lie, while making verification difficult from Hawaii. "Well," her voice carried forced normalcy, "the important thing is you're safe. We'll be home tomorrow evening as planned. Maybe we can have that farewell dinner after all." The words hit like ice water. She was already recalculating, adjusting their timeline, preparing to execute Plan B. "That sounds lovely, dear. I'll make reservations somewhere special." After hanging up, I sat in my kitchen staring at the coffee-stained divorce papers still scattered across the table. 7 days ago, those documents had represented the worst betrayal I could imagine. Now they looked like gentle disagreement. Beverly's voice kept echoing, "Farewell dinner, after all." She'd recovered quickly from her panic, already adapting to new circumstances. That scared me more than the original murder plot. It suggested backup plans, contingencies, a level of calculation I'd underestimated. Tomorrow evening, less than 30 hours to prepare for the most important performance of my life. Time to show my daughter what 70 years of survival instincts looked like when properly motivated. The 11 days between Beverly's call and their return passed like military preparation. I'd always been methodical. Martha used to tease me about making lists for everything, but now my accountant's precision became a weapon. Day one brought the most crucial conversation of my life. James Porter had been our family lawyer for 15 years, handling Martha's will and various legal matters with discretion and competence. His downtown office felt appropriately serious for what I was about to request. "Barney, you want to change your will completely?" Porter's gray eyebrows lifted in surprise. "Cut Beverly out entirely." "Everything goes to St. Jude Children's Hospital." I'd chosen the charity carefully, difficult to contest, emotionally sympathetic, administratively solid. Porter's concern was palpable. "This is quite a dramatic change. May I ask why?" Let's just say I've learned some things about my daughter's character that have disappointed me. 27 years of legal practice had taught Porter when not to probe further. We spent 2 hours ensuring the new will was ironclad. Proper witnesses, clear language, filed correctly with the court. Beverly could contest it, but she'd lose. Days 2 through 5 focused on surveillance preparation. The internet amazed me. Dozens of websites selling hidden cameras, small enough to conceal anywhere. I chose 4 units, One for the kitchen, one for the living room, one for the dining room, and one backup. The technology challenged my patience. Smartphone apps, wireless connections, cloud storage, concepts that would have seemed like science fiction when I was Beverly's age. But determination overcame frustration. By day 5, I could monitor my entire house remotely. Days 6 through 9 involved poison research. Anthony worked with industrial chemicals, giving him access to substances that could mimic heart attacks. I studied symptoms, antidotes, preservation techniques for evidence. Knowledge was protection. The most difficult preparation was psychological. For 42 years, I'd loved Beverly unconditionally. Even learning about her murder plan hadn't completely severed that emotional connection. But survival required treating her as an enemy, not a daughter. Porter called on day 10. Will's been filed, Barney. Completely legal and binding. And confidential. Attorney-client privilege. She'll never hear about it from me. Beverly's daily check-in calls continued throughout the preparation period. Her voice carried increasing stress as their return approached, but she maintained the loving daughter facade. Each conversation felt like psychological warfare, her probing for suspicious behavior, me deflecting with innocent small talk. How are you feeling, Dad? Not too tired from the travel stress? A little worn out, but looking forward to seeing you both again. We should definitely have that special dinner when we get back. I'm counting on it, sweetheart. The final day brought equipment, testing, and mental preparation. Cameras functioned perfectly, recording clear video and audio. My phone app displayed all 4 feeds simultaneously. The technology felt like magic in my 70-year-old hands. That evening, I sat in my study reviewing the evidence I'd need. Recorded confessions, poison samples, documented motives. Beverly and Anthony would arrive tomorrow, believing they still held every advantage. They were about to discover what happened when you tried to outcalculate a lifetime accountant. The trap was set. The bait was ready. Tomorrow, my daughter would learn that some numbers just don't add up. The white daisies in my hand felt like props in a theater production as I waited outside the arrival gate. Martha had always loved daisies, simple, honest flowers for simple, honest people. The irony wasn't lost on me as I prepared to greet my daughter and her accomplice. Beverly emerged first, scanning the crowd with predatory efficiency until her eyes found mine. The smile that spread across her face belonged in a museum exhibit on human deception. Perfect technique, zero authenticity. Dad, you didn't have to come all this way. Her embrace felt like being hugged by a business contract. Professional, measured, calculated for maximum emotional impact. Anthony shuffled behind her, gripping a black leather carry-on bag with white knuckles. The same bag I'd watched him organize obsessively throughout our Hawaiian vacation. The same bag that now contained my death sentence. How are you feeling? Beverly's question carried medical undertones, as if she were already diagnosing symptoms. Much better now that you're both home safely. I handed her the daisies, watching her face for micro-expressions. These reminded me of your mother. Perfect response. Her eyes actually misted slightly. Beverly had inherited Martha's ability to produce tears on command, though she'd learned to weaponize the skill. The car ride home stretched like psychological warfare disguised as family conversation. Beverly drove while Anthony sat silent in the passenger seat, occasionally checking his bag zipper with obsessive frequency. So tell us about this banking emergency, Beverly said, her tone carefully neutral. Which account was compromised? I'd spent 11 days perfecting my cover story. Someone cloned my debit card at that grocery store on Hawthorne, used it to buy electronics in Seattle. Over $3,000 before the fraud department caught it. 3,000? Anthony spoke for the first time since leaving the airport. That's significant. Terrifying what criminals can do these days, I replied, watching him in the side mirror. His relief was palpable. If I was worried about $3,000, I clearly had no idea about their $1 million scheme. Well, you're home safe now, Beverly said, pulling into my driveway, and we should celebrate our wonderful trip together. The word celebrate hung in the air like a threat. Actually, I was thinking we should have a proper farewell dinner tomorrow night, I suggested, as if the idea had just occurred to me. Something special at home with wine and good food. A real family celebration. Beverly's hands tightened on the steering wheel for just a moment, so brief I might have imagined it. That sounds perfect, Dad. What time were you thinking? 7 o'clock? I'll cook your favorite. That salmon recipe your mother used to make. Anthony shifted uncomfortably. Salmon was expensive, sophisticated, the kind of meal that justified opening quality wine, the kind of wine that would mask the taste of whatever he carried in that black leather bag. We should let you rest tonight, Beverly said, already planning. Tomorrow will be memorable. After they left, I went through my house like a general inspecting troops before battle. The cameras were invisible, positioned perfectly to capture every angle of the kitchen and dining room. My smartphone app showed 4 clear video feeds, audio quality crystal sharp. I called the non-emergency police line and spoke with Sergeant Williams, a patient woman who listened carefully as I explained my unusual request. You want us on standby for a possible poisoning attempt? Her skepticism was professional, but obvious. I have video evidence of them planning my murder. Tomorrow night, I'll have evidence of them attempting it. Sir, if you believe you're in immediate danger, I'm not. I'm in control. But I'll need officers ready to respond when I call. After some discussion and verification of my identity, Sergeant Williams agreed to have a patrol unit nearby tomorrow evening. Everything was prepared. The trap was set. Tomorrow, my daughter would discover that some family dinners come with unexpected side dishes. Justice, for instance, served cold. They arrived at 7 sharp, Beverly carrying wine and Anthony clutching that omnipresent black bag. I greeted them at the door, wearing Martha's favorite apron, a small psychological touch she would have appreciated. Something smells incredible, Beverly said, though her eyes were already calculating kitchen layouts and wine placement opportunities. Salmon with herb crust, roasted vegetables, and that wild rice pilaf you always loved. I led them into the dining room where candles flickered on Martha's good china. Anthony, would you mind opening the wine while I finish the sauce? Perfect. Anthony alone in the dining room with the wine glasses while I pretended to cook in the kitchen. My smartphone, propped against the counter, displayed all 4 camera feeds simultaneously. Time to capture a murder attempt in high definition. I watched Anthony's reflection in the kitchen window as he fumbled with the wine bottle, then reached into his bag. The small vial emerged like a deadly magic trick, clear liquid that caught the candlelight innocently. On my phone screen, the dining room camera captured everything with courtroom clarity. Anthony's nervous glances toward the kitchen, the vial's contents being measured with scientific precision. 2 drops into my wine glass, exactly as they'd planned in Hawaii. My hands trembled as I watched him pocket the empty vial and return to opening wine with exaggerated casualness. 42 years of loving this man as a son-in-law, and he'd just tried to murder me with the emotional investment of someone seasoning soup. Almost ready, I called out, my voice surprisingly steady. When I returned to the dining room with the salmon, Anthony was pouring wine with the careful attention of a sommelier. My glass, the poisoned one, sat closest to my chair, the liquid surface perfectly still and utterly deadly. This looks magnificent, Dad, Beverly said, though her eyes kept flicking to my wine glass. Should we make a toast? Absolutely. I lifted the glass toward my lips, watching their faces. Beverly's anticipation was naked, unguarded for just a moment. Anthony couldn't even pretend to smile. Then I set the glass down without drinking. Actually, let me get the good camera first. Martha would have wanted pictures of our last family dinner. The word last hit them like a physical blow. Beverly's fork clinked against her plate. Anthony's breathing became audible. I returned with my phone, switched to video mode, and aimed it directly at them. Before we eat, I want to show you both something interesting I discovered in Hawaii. Beverly's face drained of color. Dad, what are you? I was getting ice on March 7th when I heard voices by the pool. Familiar voices discussing poison, inheritance, and the best way to fake a heart attack. My voice remained conversational, almost friendly. Would you like to hear the recording? Anthony stood so quickly his chair fell backward. Barney, you don't understand. 2 drops in my wine during the toast. Anthony's pharmaceutical expertise, ensuring fast-acting cardiac symptoms. Beverly calculating my net worth down to the penny. I gestured toward my untouched wine glass. Shall we examine what's in there, or would you prefer to explain yourselves first? Beverly's composure shattered like dropped china. You can't prove anything. You're a paranoid old man. Actually, I can prove everything. I held up my phone. 4 hidden cameras recorded Anthony poisoning my wine 20 minutes ago. The poison sample will be tested. Your voices are on tape discussing my murder." The room fell silent, except for Anthony's ragged breathing and the grandfather clock Martha had inherited from her mother. Tick, tick, tick. "I called the police before you arrived," I continued. "They're waiting for my signal." That broke Anthony's last thread of composure. "Beverly, we have to run." "Run where?" I asked. "I have video evidence of attempted murder. You carried poison across state lines. There's nowhere to run from federal charges." Beverly tried one last manipulation, tears streaming down her face. "Dad, please. I'm your daughter." "My daughter died in Hawaii when I heard her planning my murder." I pressed the emergency contact on my phone. "Sergeant Williams, it's Barney Grant. They took the bait. Please send the officers in." The next few minutes blurred together. Professional voices, Miranda rights, handcuffs clicking with metallic finality, Beverly screaming about false accusations and conspiracy theories, Anthony silent, already defeated. As they were led away, Beverly turned back once more. "You'll die alone now, Dad. No family, no one who loves you." "Better alone than murdered by my own daughter." The door closed behind them, leaving me alone in the house that had witnessed 4 decades of family life and 1 night of perfect justice. I sat down at the dining table, carefully moved the poisoned wine glass aside, and ate my salmon while it was still warm. It was the best meal I'd had in months. 2 months of legal proceedings had led to this moment. Judge Margaret Klein's courtroom, packed with reporters and curious observers who'd followed what local media called the Hawaiian murder plot. I sat in the witness stand wearing my best suit, the navy one Martha had bought me for Beverly's wedding. The irony felt appropriate. "Mr. Grant," the prosecutor said, "please tell the court what you overheard on March 7th in Hawaii." My testimony was clinical, factual, devastating. Every detail of their murder plot delivered in the measured tone of a man reading quarterly financial reports. The courtroom was absolutely silent as I described my daughter's voice discussing my death like a business transaction. When they played the audio recording of that poolside conversation, Beverly actually flinched. Anthony stared at his hands, already broken. The defense attorney, a sharp young woman with perfectly styled hair, tried her best during cross-examination. "Mr. Grant, isn't it possible you misunderstood their conversation? Perhaps they were discussing a movie plot, or—" "Ma'am, I have video evidence of Anthony putting poison in my wine glass. There's no ambiguity in attempted murder." The video played on courtroom monitors, crystal clear footage of Anthony measuring death into my wine. Several jurors looked nauseated. One covered her mouth. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Judge Klein's sentencing was swift and comprehensive. Beverly received 12 years for conspiracy to commit murder and solicitation of murder. Anthony got 15 years for attempted murder and possession of toxic substances with intent to harm. "This court has rarely seen such calculated betrayal of familial trust," Judge Klein said, her voice carrying decades of judicial authority. "The defendant's actions represent the worst kind of predatory behavior, targeting a vulnerable family member for financial gain." Outside the courthouse, reporters clustered around me like hungry seagulls. "Mr. Grant, how do you feel about your daughter's sentence?" "Justice has been served. That's all that matters." "Will you ever forgive them?" "Forgiveness is between them and their consciences. I'm focused on moving forward." 1 week later, I sat in James Porter's office for the final execution of my new will. Every asset, every dollar, every piece of property would go to St. Jude Children's Hospital upon my death. "Are you certain about this, Barney?" Porter asked. "It's a substantial bequest. Over $1.2 million. "Completely certain. Beverly wanted my money badly enough to kill for it. Now it'll help children live instead." The irony was perfect. My daughter's greed had transformed my inheritance into healing for sick children. Martha would have loved that twist. That evening I sat in my living room with a glass of good whiskey, properly tested and safely consumed, looking at Martha's photograph on the mantel. "It's finished, sweetheart," I said to her smiling face. "Justice for us, hope for sick children, and maybe some peace for an old accountant who learned that some numbers just don't add up." The house felt different now, not empty, but peaceful. For the first time since Martha's death, I could imagine a future without fear, without suspicion, without the weight of betrayal. Beverly had been right about one thing. I would die alone, with no family to mourn me. But I'd also die knowing that my life's work had meaning, that my death would serve life, and that evil disguised as love had been exposed and punished. Some victories are worth any price, even the loss of a daughter who was never really there to begin with. The grandfather clock chimed 9 times, marking another peaceful evening in a house finally free of secrets. Outside, Portland's March rain continued its gentle conversation with the windows, washing the city clean for another day. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.